When talking about old beat'em ups, there's always some talking about how such and such games innovated the entire genre. Games like Double Dragon, Final Fight, Streets of Rage, Alien vs Predator, among others, are often brought up in conversations highlighting how each one contributed to the genre. And that's not a surprise since these games were incredibly unique thanks to their creative styles and mechanics, some of which are still used today. But there's one game that is often forgotten in these discussions. However, it's not because people decided to ignore it, but because it was never released in the West, making it somewhat unknown. Today, I will try to do justice to it, talking about its history, myths, why I believe this is one of the best beat'em ups you have never played, and why you should play it as soon as you watch this video. Hello and welcome my friends to The Flying Kick, I am Savino and today I bring you my complete look at Technosoft's Nekketsu Oyako, one of the few beat'em ups you could find during the 32-bit era. If you were a Sega fan back in the day, Technosoft is no stranger to you. The developers of the famous and very well-regarded series Thunder Force, Technosoft were very prolific during the 80s and 90s. Still, unfortunately, it wasn't prolific enough to save itself from bankruptcy in 2001. Most of its renown came from the excellent shoot-'em ups they developed like the aforementioned Thunder Force, but they also made a name for themselves with games like Herzog's Way, a very interesting, although primitive RTS for the Mega Drive, and also Devil's Crush, a horror pinball developed for the TurboGrafx 16, which is probably the best pinball for that console, if not the best in the whole 16-bit generation. Despite having a clear preference for shoot-'em ups, Technosoft never shied away from trying new genres, so it's not a surprise that in 1994 they released the first and only beat'em up. Releasing on December 3rd, 1994, exclusively for the PlayStation, Nekketsu Oyako, or Hot-Blooded Family, was one of the launch titles for Sony's first foray into video games. According to the records, it was the 6th game released for the console and one tailor-made to showcase how powerful the PlayStation was, as it could play games that were as good as arcade games. I think it's worth remembering that by 1994, arcades still were the reference for great graphics and innovation, and despite what the Mega Drive had told you, it was only on the 5th generation that home consoles truly started to match their arcade counterparts. And maybe because of this raw power, one rumor about this game started to roam around the web around 2016. Rumor says that Nekketsu Oyako was first developed for the arcades, but was changed to a PlayStation exclusive during production. These rumors started to run around forums and online communities thanks to comparison to other Technosoft games, and some loose interpretations of the game's mechanics like juggles, cancels, and complex commands, which at the time were more common in arcade games. Even comparisons with games like Alien vs Predator and Tower of Doom were made since these games had similar mechanics, although a bit more advanced than what Nekketsu offered. Of course, these are only unsubstantiated rumors because there isn't a single piece of evidence to corroborate them. Or at least, that's what I thought. While I was producing and researching for this video, a piece of information appeared to me and I am more than excited to confirm and finally put an end to this conversation. Nekketsu Oyako was indeed developed primarily as an arcade game. One of the game's programmers, who goes by the name Nekketsu, saw some of my posts on Twitter swearing to people that Nekketsu Oyako was always meant to be a console game. After all, according to my research, which consisted of browsing every forum and article I could find about this game, including hours looking for old Japanese magazines, everything pointed to this game being a PlayStation game through and through. So Nekketsu saw all the bullshit I was defending and probably thought, what the heck is this dude talking about, let me correct him, and supplied me with a ton of material and information about the game's development with some material that very few people saw before. Check this out. By the way, in case you're wondering, Nikon Pulp was a developer at Technosoft and worked on games like Hyper Duo for the arcades and Thunder Force 5 and Blast Winds for the Saturn, as you can see by the description here on Moby Games. Now, more interesting than the discussion over the game being originally an arcade or a console game was to find out that Nekketsu Oyako actually started as an action shooting game, with two gameplay modes. In the original game, you would be piloting a mecha, and this machine would have a humanoid form and a flying mode. But thanks to some focus tests and discussions among the team members, they scrapped the original idea and changed the game to a beat'em up. You can see some of the original pitch in this document here. In the flying mode, you would be shooting lasers and missiles, while in the humanoid form the gameplay would change to something like a fighting game with grabs and complex inputs for your moves. In these documents you can see how some of the on-foot gameplay would work and some notes about the different attacks you would have in your flying mode. Here you can find descriptions of 3 different attacks and also how upgrades would work. You can also find some interesting notes about how the grab would work when in fighting mode and how to perform some of the moves. The story here was also different in the original pitch, being darker, and it even had some social commentary. It tells you about a world ravaged by World War III that took place in the year 2000, the survivors gathering the remaining cities to rebuild them. By 2030, the cities were restored and life was almost like it was before the war. 34 years later, in 2064, Hibino Saeko, a genius woman as we will see ahead, was living a monotonous life as a housewife. Her intellect was too big for daily mundane tasks, so one day she decided that enough was enough and hacked domestic robots known as Edo 808 to build an army and take over her district and after that, Tokyo. You know, the classic story of a great scientist gone mad. To stop this madness, her husband Randall and her daughter Rio hop in the mechs they built to destroy the robots and stop Saeko. Another interesting thing here is that Taro, one of the characters in the current roster, was first a recurring mid-boss in the game, piloting a mech similar to yours, but the developers decided to redeem him, making him a good guy. The game was planned to be a bit bigger than Nekketsu Oyako with 8 different levels instead of the 5 we got, as we can see in this document here. Unfortunately, I don't know if any of the levels were reused in the final version. It was pretty lucky for me to have been found by this developer, and I would like to thank him for answering my questions so late at night. I'm uploading these documents so everyone can have access to them, the link will be in the description. If you want to follow the developer, his Twitter handle will also be there. Now let's go back to the game and talk about the story we got and how it was different from the original pitch. The new story, which you will only find in the game's manual, is pretty different, removing all mentions of war, the mecha stuff, and turning Saeko into a classic damsel in distress instead of a bored mad scientist. Here, Saeko is simply kidnapped by the Haraguro gang for reasons unknown to most people. The thing is, she has a secret past that Haraguro was aware of. In the final version, she is actually a world-famous scientist called Kano Saeko, who graduated from MIT at the age of 12 and, at 17, invented a cold fusion reactor, earning herself a Nobel Prize in the process. She tried to mask her past and live a regular life, but Haraguro needed her amazing intellect to build a powerful weapon. The manual doesn't say why they wanted to build a weapon, but it was probably to take over the city or the world, you know, the regular beaten up or shooting up stuff. Now it's up to her husband Randall, her daughter Rio, and her assistant Taro to save her and stop the Haraguro once and for all. It's a shame that you can only find the story in the manual and only in Japanese, because this could have been a pretty cool cutscene right before the game. The PlayStation was no stranger when it came to animated cutscenes, but alas, that wasn't the case. Visually, Nekketsu Oyako is truly impressive, especially for 1994. I, like many of you out there, Never had the chance to play this one at launch. I mean, I didn't own a PlayStation back then, and even if I did, importing games from Japan was completely out of question for me. But I'm sure if I had played this game in December of 1994, my mind would have been blown away. The details on the sprites, the number of enemies on the screen, the impressive number of colors, the variety of backgrounds, everything here was made to shock the player. Right from the start, the very first scene, you can see the amazing sprite work, with highly detailed sidewalks, beautiful sakura trees scattering their petals around you, and a magnificent vista showing your town sprawling as far as the eye can see. The number of colors here in this scene alone can put any beat'em up released for the Super Nintendo or Mega Drive to shame. And things don't stop here, this whole level is truly impressive. Later in the same level, you will be taken to the city's commercial area with lots of stores selling PlayStations or Saturns, depending on the version, blinking lights and a yellow stone to everything thanks to the sunset. There are even some quote-unquote light effects with the light that comes from the store's windows illuminating the floor. After that, you will be looking at the city from across the river at night, with the city shining in the background while lampposts illuminate your way to the boss with some incredible transparency simulating the light. These transparencies are absent on the Saturn port since the console couldn't render these types of effects. It makes a lot of difference when comparing both side by side, but I doubt anyone was complaining about this back in the day. The Saturn also runs in a lower resolution than the PS1, so some of the details on Sega's machines aren't as crisp as they are in the PlayStation, but to compensate for that, the Saturn version looks brighter, making the stages pop a little more. For a console beaten up, it's hard to say there was a better urban level than this one, but it wasn't just this level that was incredibly done. Here, you will be swallowed by a whale, fight for your life inside its guts, just to be expelled by its nostrils and keep fighting while riding it. Later, you will be fighting in an amusement park with roller coaster rides and all, inside a volcanic cave, a Greek garden, and what I can only describe as a floating island. Nekketsu Oyako developers were extremely creative, bringing the most unique scenarios beat'em ups have ever seen up to that point. Unfortunately, this creativity wasn't applied to the enemies, which had very little variety. Sure, you can find some of the craziest enemies ever, like these freaking octopuses with boxing gloves, but there is little to see here that you won't find in the first 2 or 3 levels. The 3 playable characters are really nothing you haven't seen before, but they look great nonetheless. Animations are also good, not great on the PlayStation, but it was improved on the Saturn version with some frames added to the main characters and a few enemies and bosses. Overall, I think Nekketsu Oyako looks truly amazing, and the natural evolution for consoles beaten ups with everything looking bigger and more colorful, finally delivering what arcades were doing for years. While there are minimal visual differences between the Saturn and PS1 ports, I think both games look equally impressive and something way above what we saw in the previous generation. Unfortunately, as we all know, this is one of the few games in the style that would grace the 32-bit generation. By 1995, when the Saturn version was released, 2D games were perceived as something from last gen, and with that, the golden age of beat'em ups was about to end. Like the graphics, the music in Nekketsu Oyako is amazing. From the moment you start playing, you can feel how energetic the whole thing is. The first tune from the game, Outer City Road, already sets the perfect mood for the game, with its synthesizers taking the lead as one would expect from a 90s OST. Actually, the whole OST is pretty fitting to the game. The music when you go inside the whale has some longer and deeper notes, giving you a light sensation, as if you were floating on water. The same can be said about the roller coaster ride, where the music is filled with ups and downs, just like the ride you're on. There is a pretty good selection of songs here. Every level section gets its own tune, so with only 5 short levels, you get 15 unique tunes, plus the boss's themes, which are also unique. And just as happens with the visuals, there are some difference here between the two versions. While in the PS1 version the music is rendered by the SPU, the console audio chip, the music in the Saturn version was delivered directly from the CD. This not only improved the audio quality, but the tunes were also remixed for this version and are largely considered the best between the two. The music here was composed by Tsukumo Hyakutaro, who worked on some of the Thunder Force games, and also by Toshiharu Yamanishi, who is also known for his work in Thunder Force. Yamanishi left Technosoft after concluding his work on this game, according to internet sources, making Nekketsu Oyako his last work at the company. When it comes to the sound effects, unfortunately, they aren't stellar like the OST. They do their job, but they could have been more impactful. I think they feel pretty flat. Hitting your enemies with Ryo's hammer doesn't really feel like you're breaking bones. And Tero's sword lacks that whoosh sound that makes every sword feel sharp. Also, I'm not sure if I have been playing way too many Super Nintendo games, but I miss some reverb here to give everything a bit of oomph. Again, the Saturn version sounds way better than the PS1, with sounds and voices sounding way clearer and cleaner, while in the PS1 they sound a bit muffled and compressed. Honestly, in both cases there are better sounds and voices in some 16-bit games, and it's a shame that a game like this didn't take the opportunity to showcase the console's capabilities when it comes to sound. Even with some improvements on the Saturn, the sound design still disappoints a bit, and it would be way worse if it weren't for the stellar OST. As I said in the introduction, Nekketsu Oyako is a family story. Here you can play with Randall, the husband, who is also the grappler of the bunch and very similar to a certain famous mayor. Ryo, the daughter, who is obviously the quick and weak female who carries what I can only assume is a magic and very impolite hammer. And finally Taro, Saeko's assistant, who is your all-rounder and the type of guy who casually carries a laser sword. Gameplay-wise, the game is not different from your typical 16-bit beat-em up. You can choose from 4 different difficult levels from easy to master, you can increase the number of lives from 2 to 5, and luckily you can change your controllers to your liking. You have 5 levels as I said previously, and these levels are divided into 3 sub-stages, with a boss at the end of the third one. Pretty basic stuff. Your character have a good number of moves at their disposal, but here is where the biggest difference between the Saturn and PlayStation versions start to appear. At first glance everything looks the same, you have an attack button, a jump, a powerful desperation move, and you can dash by tapping twice on the directional or thankfully pressing a button. All your characters have a few special moves which you can perform by combining directional inputs like QCF or HCF to unleash some nice special moves. Now, one thing that I really like here is how your dash button, the right bumper, can be used to lock the direction you're facing. One thing that always bothered me in beat-em ups when you have complex commands is how easy it is to miss the timing just to see your character turning their back to the enemy. Yeah, it might be a skill issue from yours truly, but whatever the reason is, this small detail can make a world of difference. I would even go as far as saying that this should lock your height too, but I digress. Now, the biggest difference between both versions here is your moveset. Ryo has a couple of more moves like this shockwave here or this projectile attack which are missing on the PlayStation. Randall also has a new attack, his speed was improved and his uppercuts feel a bit more powerful on the Saturn. Taro can now attack enemies in the air by pressing down on the attack button, a move that was missing in the PS1 version. The controls were also improved and they feel a bit more responsive, with the special moves being easier to pull. But the biggest difference between both versions here is the improved fighting engine on the Saturn. Here, cancels are more prominent and the juggle physics was altered to allow the players to keep the enemies in the air more easily, but your characters weren't the only ones to be improved. Both regular enemies and bosses were also tweaked, receiving new moves, behaviors, and even animations to balance things out. Another change they made to balance the game was removing from the Saturn the ability to increase your health over 100%. In the PS1 version, if your health is maxed out, you can still eat the food you find to increase it even further. This can make a lot of difference, especially because your health won't be replenished when changing levels. But with the addition of the new attacks and cancels on the Saturn, the developers decided to remove it since it would make the game pretty easy. Actually, even without all the extra moves, the PS1 version feels a bit easier thanks to that. The game itself isn't that hard, with 5 lives and 5 continues, anyone can easily beat the game on normal or expert difficulties, but things can get a bit tough on the master setting. The bosses can be pretty hard, taking a lot of your health with one single attack, and they don't like that you open space between both of you, since they will always cover the ground to get closer and strike. The combat here feels amazing. The hitboxes are great, some are even way too generous like Ryo's Shockwave, and the hit stops feel awesome. There's a weight when you hit your enemies that you didn't see that often on consoles or even on the arcades unless you're playing Capcom games. Enemies may not be that smart, but in later levels their sheer number will be enough to give you a lot of trouble, especially because you lack some precious iframes. The game also offers a nice amount of weapons for you to use. Knives, grenades, rifles and submachine guns are among your arsenal. And as you may imagine, these weapons can be very handy, especially to weaken some of the bosses. Strangely enough, there are no melee weapons here. Yes, 2 of the 3 characters have their own, but even so, it would have been nice. Some weapons like this heavy rocket launcher can only be carried by random, and the same can be said about the beer, which only he can drink. In later levels the difficulty will spike a bit, but it's still manageable enough. The truly annoying thing here is the boss gauntlet on the last level, but that's not uncommon, especially not in this era. Overall, Nekketsu Oyako is an impressive game. Maybe not that much on the PS1, but on the Saturn this is something pretty unique for home consoles. Sure, the game wasn't as impressive as something like Alien vs Predator, which was released 7 months before the PS1 version and offered a much more in-depth gameplay, but for a home release, there was nothing like it. Yes, the game feels a bit incomplete, with a very small selection of enemies, no unlockable characters and only one ending. But if you like a good challenge and unique combat, this is probably one of the best games you can get in your collection. It's definitely the best 2.5D beat'em up on the Saturn, which didn't offer too much competition in the genre. On the PS1 side, the game was pretty good, even when compared with competitors like Captain Commando or Warriors of Fate. Unfortunately, the game is pretty rare nowadays, and because of that the physical version can cost you a lot of money, but apparently you can download it on the PSN. The game is available only in Japanese, but come on, since a beat'em up, there's nothing here that will hurt your experience. As I said, there is not even a cutscene here aside from the ending, so you won't be missing anything. But if you really want to see the Latin alphabet on your screen, there's a translation for the PS1 version available on the web. If you never played this one, I recommend that you do it any way you can. There's a great game here, one that could use a bit more polish, that's for sure, but even so, the combat is so fun that I'm sure you will have a heck of a time learning the secrets of this forgotten gem. And that's it for the video, folks. If you reached this far, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more beat'em up things in your life. I'll be back this weekend talking even more about beat'em ups, but until then, I hope you all have an awesome week, and remember, keep beat'em up.